So the other day I made a video talking about what are the best martial arts as bases for MMA, and I got a comment asking me if I could cover what martial arts are the best for less risk of injuries and for longevity. So that's what I'm going to do today in this video. Today we're going to be talking about what martial arts are best in terms of longevity, less risk of injury, and you could do later on into your life, and I'm going to be ranking them from worst to best. So let's get into it. Now, starting off the bottom of the list is going to be boxing. Now, a lot of you will be asking me, why have you put boxing instead of, Muay Thai or kickboxing or any other striking art? I mean, I put boxing because boxing has the highest level of mortality rates. A lot of people have died relating to boxing injuries, and there's a lot of head trauma caused by boxing. Repeated blows to the head builds up. It increases the risk of brain damage, even in light sparring, and there's the risk of your hands and wrist getting damaged, which are pretty common. Look at examples like Muhammad Ali. Him taking continuous punishment to the head really impacted him in his later years in life and caused him to have Parkinson's disease and live the rest of his life in a very, very terrible condition, which isn't ideal. So that's why I'd say boxing, it has the highest rates of mortality, taking a lot of punches to the head, excessive blows. You're always in sparring and trying to improve yourself. There's a lot of risk of potentially damaging yourself later down the line, and having a rate of dying doesn't really correlate with having better longevity in martial arts. So that's why I'd say boxing is the worst martial art to have longevity in. Now, the next martial art you look at is Muay Thai. Now, Muay Thai is pretty bad for longevity. I say this because when you look at Muay Thai fighters, a lot of them in Thailand start off really young. They're starting at the age of 8, 9, even 10. They're fighting from very young. They fight, some of them a couple times a week, every couple of weeks. They keep fighting constantly at a young age. They're conditioning their bodies to become very strong, to become brutal. Their shins go through a lot of conditioning. They're taking so much punishment, and a lot of these fighters in Thailand who train in Muay Thai, you won't see them fighting for much longer. At the age of 40, for example, a lot of them retire quite young, and it is expected. You're starting from childhood and you're continuing for a very long time. You're taking all those damaging shots, the punches, the kicks to the head, kicks to the body, the knees, the elbows, getting swept off the floor. A lot of that builds up, and in terms of longevity, taking a lot of punishment doesn't correlate well with sustaining yourself to be able to train in that certain martial art for a very long time. A lot of Thai fighters won't be able to compete and train like they used to do when they were younger because of the wear and tear that their body takes. So that's why I'd say Thai boxing or Muay Thai will be quite lower on the list because of the damage sustained throughout your whole life training on Muay Thai. Now, moving on to kickboxing, I'd say kickboxing is primarily going to be a bit lower on the list because in terms of longevity, you're taking the same punishment as a boxer. You're getting punched in the head, you're also taking kicks to the head, but you won't take as much punishment as a Muay Thai fighter. You're not getting clinched up and getting elbowed, swept off the floor. But when you look at certain kickboxing styles and certain kickboxing coaches, you look at Japanese kickboxers, you look at Dutch kickboxers, the most popular styles of kickboxing, and you see that a lot of these fighters are very brutal in sparring. They're known for constantly going hard in sparring, and they just go for it and hit each other and try to knock each other's out. Now, looking at that, that's not very good for longevity. You're trying to train to become an intelligent kickboxer and do well in your craft, but taking sparring that hard and trying to knock each other out, you won't really improve, and you will take a lot of damage. You will you won't evolve as you could have, and later down the line you might have some health issues later down, brain damage, wrist problems, and even injuries related to your hip as you're constantly kicking, and ankle injuries and knee injuries, which are quite common. So I'd say kickboxing, it's not as brutal as Muay Thai. The mortality rates aren't as high as boxing, but because the culture around these styles of kickboxing, which are quite popular, encourage constant hard sparring and brutal conditioning to be a better kickboxer. In terms of longevity, you won't be as high on the list because you're constantly pushing yourself and pushing yourself to an extreme like that will ultimately lessen your longevity and cause you to not be able to practice kickboxing like you did at a younger age. Now moving on, we've got wrestling, and wrestling isn't as dangerous as Muay Thai or boxing or kickboxing, and my reasonings for this is because yes, wrestling is great for you because you learn a great skill of takedowns, scrambling, you'll have explosive movements, but the difference with comparing to Muay Thai and wrestling is that wrestling you'll have a lot of wear and tear and heavy strain on your body. What I mean by this is that when you compare to the striking arts, you'll have a lot of direct trauma hitting the body, you'll be constantly poked at, whereas when it comes to wrestling, your body is kind of just deteriorating because of you won't be able to train at that high intensity that you did in your younger days, and later down the line you'll have to slow down and have more risks of injuries. Like for example, you look at Kamaru Usman. Kamaru Usman is known for having bad knees because it's directly correlated to his younger days of wrestling. He can't walk up the stairs or go down the stairs normally, he has to do it backwards because of the strain he has on his knees. Wrestling has impacted him in a way that it's deteriorated his body because of the high intensity it puts on him. Whereas when you look at like striking arts like boxing or Muay Thai, they're facing direct trauma, whereas wrestling is decaying from the inside because of the constant pressure put on the body. Wrestling is less likely to give you pain later in your life relating to head trauma and having diseases like Parkinson's. You won't be like Muhammad Ali, but you'll definitely be like Kamaru Usman in terms of knee injuries and back pain, etc. Your type of pain will be different, as you won't be prohibited in terms of your speech. You won't be like Freddie Roach, for example, but your body will be impacted in a different way, which is not as dangerous in terms of boxing or kickboxing or Muay Thai. It's its own separate version of pain, but it's not also in a good way, but it's something that is more manageable and not as scary like the implications of boxing or Muay Thai, for example. Now moving on to one of the most effective martial arts for long-term longevity, it's going to be point style karate. Now hear me out on this. A lot of you are going to be like, didn't you just say striking can cause damage to you long-term and cause trauma? Yes, that is true, but with point style karate, the type of force that you put into your shots isn't full. What I mean by this is that you're not going full contact, you're just realistically tapping the opponent. And with point style karate, you're having minimal head trauma, you're getting to putting your technique into practical use, you're able to learn a wide variety of striking aspects, and you're constantly learning, and you're not taking as much damage that you would in other martial arts. Sparring and matches are well controlled and made sure that you don't go crossing over the line and causing a lot of damage to your opponent, and making sure that your opponent doesn't cause damage to you. You'll stay well disciplined, your timing will be on point, and your techniques will be flawless as you practice that martial art. So I'd say in terms of effectiveness for longevity, point style karate is there. When you compare it to like contact style of karate like Kyokushin, then yeah, karate isn't as effective longevity because you're going to take a lot of punishment. But when you take point style karate, you go light contact, not full contact, and you get to like fully be able to practice your technique practically on another person, have it monitored and controlled under your sensei. You will be able to train in your martial art without destroying your body for the long term. Now the final martial art that is the most effective for longevity is going to be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now Jiu-Jitsu is overall one of the best martial arts in terms of long-term training because it involves no strikes, which is safe for the brain and body. You can practice submissions, and there's a safety factor because when you train Jiu-Jitsu with the right people, you will be able to reduce the risks of getting into injuries by just tapping out. Jiu-Jitsu allows you to roll and learn all sorts of techniques, and you will be dangerous. Jiu-Jitsu isn't really known for having high mortality rates. When do you rarely ever hear people dying from Jiu-Jitsu? So because of the low mortality rates and lesser risk of injuries, Jiu-Jitsu is going to be the number one martial art on this list in terms of longevity, because you'll be able to train in that martial art for a very long time, as you know, there's less likely of you getting any head injuries because of punches. You know, you won't be slammed onto your head, for example, like wrestling. And you know, the only risk is, you know, getting your joints hurt or your shoulder dislocated, for example. But that's only if the person you're rolling with, you know, isn't really a nice person. But other than that, that's been this video. These are just my opinions on what martial arts are best for longevity. You know, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.